Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. Today we're going to be talking about the series finale of WandaVision. So this is just a heads up, filled with spoilers. So if you guys haven't seen the finale, definitely make sure to watch the episode, then come back here. Or if you don't care, continue watching. But if you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. And without further ado, let's go ahead and talk WandaVision. I'm also going to give my overall thoughts on the series at the end of it as well. Episode kicks off, it picks up right where we left off in the previous episode with Wanda and Agatha in the street with Wanda's kids, and they're going at it. They start fighting, but Wanda soon realizes that Agatha wants her to use her powers because, like the commercial said, a few episodes back, she feeds on your magic. So basically, every time Wanda uses her powers, Agatha is able to absorb that. So she's trying to goad her into using her powers more. So finally, Wanda gets sick of this, and she ends up taking like a car and throwing it at Agatha, and it hits her, goes into the house. What I thought was funny, there was a nice little Easter egg to the Wizard of Oz, because we go over, you see the car, and then you see Agatha's boots underneath the car, and I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. And that's not the only time that the Wizard of Oz, like a reference to that movie, came up as well, because later on in the episode, when they're downtown, you see like the movie theater again, and things are like glitching. It says the Great and Powerful Oz. So I was like, oh, cool, a couple little Easter eggs for the Wizard of Oz in this episode. As they're fighting too, Agatha disappears, and Wanda, she turns around and sees White Vision shows up, and she goes over to him because obviously she's like, oh my god, like, is this Vision? Is this actually you? And he like puts his hand on her face and thinks that he's nice, and yeah, so much for that, picks her up and starts like crushing her skull. And I was just like, you could like hear like the cracking, so that was pretty wild. And then Vision, or the Hex Vision, too many visions, Hex Vision comes along, tackles them, and they start getting into a fight. I was a little disappointed when we didn't get Ultron's voice. I was kind of almost thinking they were going to do that with the White Vision. So no, this was just White Vision kind of from like the comics, whatever. So it was voiced by Paul Bettany, but I was kind of hoping that we had that, but that's totally fine. I'm not like super disappointed or anything like that. We then end up finding out that Pietro is keeping Monica inside his house, which is what we thought was Agatha's house, like originally. And she tries to to get out, and it's weird because we end up finding out that his name is Ralph Boner, which I thought was kind of like odd, but that's his real name, and he's like supposed to be like an actor, and Monica ends up pulling off like the necklace that was possessing him, and we find out that supposedly he's just like a person. But I think it's the one thing that I thought was kind of weird, and that and I've seen some other people say the same thing, that it could possibly still be another like Quicksilver, although the way he reacted was kind of weird. But he was still using like the Quicksilver like abilities, and to me, like, I don't know, it's like Agatha, when she possesses him, is she able to like give him like the same abilities as like Quicksilver? So I don't know, that was kind of weird. And just his room, the way it's set up, actually looks very similar to the Quicksilver from the X-Men movies. So I know a lot of people were really disappointed that they basically are saying that this guy is just like some random guy in Westview and he's just an actor. But I don't know, there's definitely some coincidences there that maybe in the future they could be like, oh yeah, maybe he's not the exact like X-Men one, but he is another, Quicksilver of some sorts, and Ralph is just like a fake name or something that he was like going by. So I was a little disappointed by that. I know a lot of people are actually kind of like pissed off that that's like the case, but you can still kind of hold out hope there. Maybe that they're going to do something else with his character, but, we'll see. After that, we find out, we see like Jimmy finally find out like what happened to him, because he was kind of left by himself, and he gets not arrested, but he gets taken in by Hayward and like his like group. And, Hayward basically like, we find out, or Jimmy finds out Hayward's whole plan. And, Jimmy kind of bluffs and he says like, oh, like I already called like Quantico and they're going to be here within the hour. And we get to see Jimmy use his little magic tricks again, where he gets out of his handcuffs. So that, that was kind of funny. And he actually then ends up calling like Quantico. But, basically Hayward's whole thing was that he was just trying to build like, a sentient like weapon. And he was able to do that, building like the Vision. So, I mean, in this like series, I wouldn't say he really was completely like a villain. He was definitely shady and he was a dick at times, but I would not say he's really like the villain of like this story for sure. And like he does something later on that I was like, wow, wasn't expecting that. I mean, they tried to vilify him there for sure when he shoots at the kids. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. I was like, Jesus Christ, dude, even though they're technically not real in the hex, like, shooting a gun at these kids is like, that's pretty extreme. So they definitely tried to make him a villain like there, but for the most part, he was just a major dick and just did some shady stuff, but he wasn't like the villain of like the story like at all. So then after that, we see Wanda, she goes to like downtown because after the whole fight with like Vision and stuff like that, she ended up chasing after Agatha and going to like the downtown area. And we see Agatha and she pulls out what we confirm is now the Darkhold. I know we were kind of wondering what that was. Some people I saw were actually thinking that could be the Darkhold but some people were kind of like divided on it because that was in like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff like that. And like basically it seems like they're retconning that book and this is like the Darkhold for the MCU. And Agatha, you know, she explains that there's like a whole chapter just devoted to the Scarlet Witch, and she's like explaining this stuff and basically how Wanda is destined to destroy the world, and Wanda's like, no, like that's not me, you know, da 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 da. And then at that point, Agatha, she starts freeing all the people in like the town, like freeing their minds from Wanda's control. First we see Dottie, so that kind of throws that whole theory like right out the window. A lot of like theories in this series finale were thrown out the window, as they were in like every episode, which makes it fun in my opinion. But we see Dottie, she frees her from her mind control, and it was actually kind of sad and scary. She's like, can you please like let my daughter go? She's in her bedroom. I haven't seen her for a long time. Like she could be, you know, friends with your kids, whatever storyline you want to do. She's freaking out. And then we see all the other town people, and we got to see David Payton, who I just had on the show. He's one of them, like Herb. But we see everyone else, you know, they're all like freaking out. They're talking about like, they're having nightmares of like, you know, Wanda's nightmares. And Mrs. Hart, you know, she's like, you're poisoning us with your grief. And you can just see all these people, and they start surrounding Wanda, and they really overwhelm her. And then Wanda, you know, doesn't do it like on purpose, but because of like she's just overcome with all this emotion because of all these people, and she's like, no, you guys are supposed to be at peace, and da 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 da, and she freaks out and almost kills them all because she, you know, she starts like strangling them without even like realizing kind of like what she did. And it's just a really good example of what I think is of more to come down the line with her character. She has so much power. And I think, you know, she can have these like little like outbursts and stuff like that. And it's not something necessarily she means to do, but when she does it, it can really put a lot of people in danger. And she almost kills them all before she realizes what's happening and stops it. But that whole scene, I thought that was really cool, you know, getting to see all these people, you know, kind of what they've been going through this whole time in Westview, how Wanda's been controlling them and manipulating them. So that was a really, really cool scene. One of my favorites, like, in the finale for sure. And so Agatha, you know, she kind of did this whole thing because she's trying to trick Wanda to, you know, she's like, if you're, like, really a hero, you have to, like, free these people right now. So Wanda's like, okay, you know, she starts, like, lifting the hex and telling these people all to get out. But at the same time, you know, Vision and Vision are going at it. The hex starts opening, and then, you know, Vision starts losing his powers because he starts dying. He falls down. We see, you know, Wanda's kids, Billy and Tommy, they come over. They're starting to fall apart. That was something that I was kind of wondering what was going to happen with them. Like, could they survive outside the hex? And evidently not. So then Wanda is kind of in this predicament. It's like, do you save, you know, let the residents of Westview go? Do you lift the hex? Or do you save, you know, your family that's inside here? And so, you know, sure enough, which in that position, it's like a lot of people would probably, you know, make that decision to save like their family. Like, I mean, that makes sense. So she brings the hex down and, you know, saves like her family, closes it back up. And then we get a couple different like matchups again. We get the, you know, the setup with like Wanda versus Agatha. We get the Vision versus, you know, Vision fight. And the Vision versus Vision fight was probably one of my other favorite scenes in the series finale as well. Because, you know, they start going at it. And I loved actually even earlier in their fight when they were fighting and like phasing through each other and stuff like that. That was super cool. You know, so they did something a little bit extra rather than just these like two like superheroes like going at it. Like I loved like adding the phasing, through like each other because that's one of Vision's like powers. So that was really interesting. But my favorite part was definitely when they both go into the library, and initially they're fighting, but then the Hex Vision, he looks at White Vision and says like, why are you doing this? And basically they get into this philosophical battle, and basically they figure out how both of them are Vision, but they're not really Vision because they have, two like separate parts of like his being. So neither one of them are the true Vision, but at the same time they are, if that makes sense. So I loved that whole like mind battle because it makes sense, for that character. He's super intelligent. So I thought it was interesting to, instead of just having like a continuous, fighting of the two characters, punching each other and stuff like that, we got a little bit of like, battle of the minds. And then the White Vision's like, please explain. And he actually ends up, the Hex Vision ends up, restoring all of his memories, and then his eyes, kind of go back to normal, and you can see the White Vision is just like completely like overwhelmed about like everything. He just got all these memories like downloaded into a system. So you can imagine like with anybody, if they suddenly remembered all this stuff, at like one moment, you would kind of probably freak out too. So he takes off and he goes who knows where. Like I imagine obviously we're going to see him at some point again, but I don't know like where he went off to. But yeah, he disappears, so he's gone for the rest of the episode. It was also, fun to see Billy and Tommy use their powers. So like the military, Wanda's like, oh, like, take out like the military, like while I go fight Agatha, basically. And we get to see, them like use like their super speed. And then Hayward, like I said, he comes out of nowhere and he starts shooting at these kids. It's like, even though they're not real, like, what the hell are you doing, dude? You don't shoot at kids like with a gun. So, and like Monica, like she comes over to stop that. And I like that sequence, the way, she was able to have like the bullets like phase through her and her eyes turn yellow. For some reason, I think the yellow like in her eyes was probably my favorite color that we've seen so far, as because like her eyes have been purple, blue, several different like shades, because they kind of adjust, depending on like what she sees. But the yellow really stood out, and I loved like the bullets like phasing through her. And then we saw Billy, stop like the bullet too. And so that whole sequence, that was cool. And then Hayward ends up getting captured because Darcy slams into his truck, and he's basically captured from there. So then we end up, kind of getting the Agatha versus like Wanda battle of like the episode. And at first, Wanda ends up sneaking up on Agatha, and she does the little mind wiggly woos thing where she, she goes in, does like the mind manipulation, and she brings her back to Salem, Massachusetts, and all of the dead witches start coming back. And like at first, like Agatha's like begging her to like stop, like no. But then we see the witches actually turn and start going after Wanda because she's the more powerful witch, which I thought was interesting. And then, Agatha, she says something like, power isn't your problem, it's knowledge. And that's something that kind of ties into more like later on, like in the episode, specifically one of the end scenes that we'll talk about in a second. And then Agatha, she says to Wanda, she's like, if you give me your powers, I'll let you keep Westview, basically. And like throughout this whole thing, she's not like she's actually having like, she wants Wanda to give her the power. She's not actually like taking them from her, which is, I thought that was like interesting too. It wasn't like just something, it's like, well, I'm just gonna like, sap your powers from you. She wants Wanda to actually use her powers and to like give them to Agatha herself. So they start kind of going at it after, kind of the mind thing, and they start like, fighting in the sky, and Wanda's like, you know what, like, I don't want my powers. And I was kind of like, oh shit, like, I thought she was almost gonna, she was gonna die and be kind of like reborn sort of thing, but she starts, throwing like her magic, and it looks like, Agatha is absorbing everything. And as she does, throughout the episode too, we start seeing like Wanda's hands, they start turning, like black, like kind of like charcoal, and like her face is getting, like darker and stuff like too. So it looks like, she's draining her of all of her powers. But then, Agatha, she goes to use her powers to basically like cast like, the spell that she was talking about, or fix Wanda's spell, and then we see it doesn't work. And then, we see that Wanda's actually been playing her the whole time, and she reveals that, she has runes set up, inside this hex. So basically, Agatha can't use her powers, which is interesting. And then, she ends up getting all of her powers back, and we finally get to see the Scarlet Witch costume. I told you guys it wasn't that like big of a thing to like guess or whatever, just based off the last episode, but I told you guys we were going to see that costume here, and I thought the costume looks fucking amazing. I hope that like Hot Toys does like a figure of her, because that will be like a day one purchase. But yeah, I thought the costume, they did a good job of updating it from like the comics, and I thought that Elizabeth Olsen looked amazing in that. So I can't wait to see more of that going on like in the future with that costume and everything. Agatha, as she sees like the Scarlet Witch like costume, and they come back down, she's like, you don't know what you've done, you don't understand what you've unleashed. So I don't know if she's referring more to just like the Scarlet Witch like herself, like, she's kind of, as Wanda's coming more into her powers, or if it's, something that, maybe she's accidentally unleashed from like the Darkhold, whether it's like a Mephisto or a Nightmare. Yes, we're still hanging on to some of those theories, even though they didn't show up in this series, but I'm assuming there might be, some character or something like that Wanda accidentally unleashes from like the Darkhold. So I don't know if it's quite just like the Scarlet Witch herself, because like obviously she is super powerful. She told Wanda that her destiny is to destroy the world. So I think it could be that, but I'm also kind of on the fence that it could also be, like a character that's like maybe she like accidentally unleashed by bringing, the Scarlet Witch, to like fruition as well. And then Wanda, she tells like, Agatha that she's like, well, you know what I'm going to do with you? You're going to be trapped in Westview, and I'm going to give you the character that you originally were playing, and that's the nosy neighbor. And she turns her back basically into Agnes. The only thing with that, so it was a little like confusing when, because the hex ends up coming down and she's still there. So I'm assuming basically, even though the hex is gone, she's still like the Agnes like character, and she's going to be like living in that house, with Ralph, I guess. But that was like a little weird. So I'm assuming like she basically just trapped her like in her own mind, and she's just like this character. And we're definitely gonna see her again, because she hints at that if I need you, I'll come see you. So at this point in the episode, it's kind of wrapping up, and basically like Wanda is kind of made the decision that she's gonna bring down the hex. She's kind of realized what she's done and what needs to be done as far as like the town of Westview goes. So she goes back home, tucks like her kids in with like Vision, doesn't tell them that. She's like, hey, bye, good night, like I'm about to wipe you guys out of existence. I mean, like, granted, if she did, they'd probably be freaking out, but she does make an interesting comment to the kids. She says like, thank you for choosing me to be your mom. I thought that comment was interesting. I don't know if that's going to tie into anything in the future as far as like kind of the kids' origins, because they did kind of just come out of nowhere, like immaculate conception. So we'll see if that ties into something more in like the future, because like again, we'll get into the end credit scene in a second. But I thought that comment was interesting. And then, she ends up saying goodbye to Vision as well as she's bringing the hex in, and basically hints at that we're going to see Vision again. So I imagine it's probably going to be the White Vision is going to show up in like a future movie. I don't know if it's Doctor Strange or something like that, but I think for sure we're going to see him. And they'll say hello again, as Wanda and Vision, as they say, before he's officially wiped out, and then she's just left standing there with the ruins of like the house that we saw in like the last like episode. Wanda then, she has like the biggest like walk of shame. She walks back to the town, and you see like all the people, and they're giving dirty looks at her, which I mean, who can blame them after they've all just been mind controlled for like how long? But she goes up to like Monica, and she's talking to her. And they have like a little like conversation, and then like the police are coming, and so Wanda's like, yeah, I gotta get out of here. Basically, like, I'm definitely not welcome like around here anymore, and she kind of has to go on the run. So she flies off, and that kind of ends the episode there. But then we get like two credit scenes. So the first one, we see this lady, she tells Monica, she's like, oh, you're needed in like the theater. And so she goes inside, and we end up finding out that it is a Skrull. And she's like, oh, one of your mom's old friends, found out that you were grounded. It's time he wants to meet you or whatever, or they want to meet you. I don't think they actually say like he, but they want to meet you, and points up to the sky. I'm assuming that's Nick Fury, and that's kind of tying in obviously to Captain Marvel 2, because we know that Monica Rambeau is going to be in there. So that should be interesting to see the whole interaction between her and Captain Marvel, just because obviously with WandaVision, we show that she has some animosity towards Carol Danvers' character. So I think that whole confrontation will be interesting, and we know at some point they're going to do the secret invasion. So curious to see what's going to happen with like the Skrulls and stuff like that goes. So that was like the first mid-credit scene, and then we got an actual post-credit scene, and this was the one that I was more interested in just because it had like Wanda in it. So we zoom out, and it kind of almost reminded me at first, I was like, oh, it kind of reminds me of like, like The Shining, like that like shot where they're going through like, like over the lakes and stuff like that, and then we see like this cabin, and that actually reminded me of Thanos. When we see him like in like the little cabin, and we see Wanda, and she, she's sitting out there, and she goes inside, she's like making tea, but then the camera, goes in the back room, and you see Scarlet Witch, she's astral projecting herself, and she's reading through the dark hold, and really, I think, kind of referring back to earlier in the episode, trying to gain like more knowledge. And she said at the end too, like, I don't understand this power right now, but I will. So she's reading through like the dark hold, but then we hear her kids screaming, very similar to what they did earlier on in the episode. So I don't know if that was more of just her just remembering like her kids like screaming, and she's like trying to go after them, or we're still holding on to those Mephisto theories that, because in the comics, like her kids, they are made of like shards of like Mephisto. So like, are they in like, the hell dimension or something like that? I don't know if they're going to go that direction just because, they didn't, Mephisto or anything didn't show up in WandaVision. It's just a theory that maybe they could go that way. I'm thinking she's just, she's remembering them like screaming, and what she's going to be doing is trying to figure out a way to bring back her kids, and that probably involves like tearing open like the multiverse at some point, because we know this ties into Spider-Man 3, and it also ties into Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. So I'm assuming that's what she's going to do, and I have a feeling, going into that book, The Darkhold, she's probably going to unleash some shit that she doesn't mean to, but she's going to unleash some crazy shit that Doctor Strange is going to have to deal with and stuff like that. So I think that's how that's all going to kind of like tie in together. But yeah, guys, I mean, so that, that was the series finale. I really enjoyed it. Like, there was the Evan Peters thing, I kind of was hoping like we were maybe going to get like an actual Quicksilver moment and stuff like that. So I was a little disappointed with that. But overall, I really, really enjoyed the episode. I love, like the series, like overall. I think, some people forget because there was like, and I got caught up in some of those theories too. And I think that, that's what makes it fun. And in a way, some of those, like those theories and stuff like that not coming to fruition, in a way is kind of good, because like if they all did, it's like, well, we all like kind of predicted that or whatever, or we all thought that would happen, and they didn't go that route. So in a way, I kind of like that, because it, it kept you on your toes. Like each episode, we were throwing theories out there, and some would stick, some wouldn't. So I think, they did a good job as far as that goes. I know some people I've seen some people that are pretty pissed that, some of these things didn't happen, and they're like, oh, this was it was a waste of time. Like, none of these characters like showed up that I thought were going to. And I don't know, for me, I just, the whole idea of this series was really kind of tackling, Wanda and Vision's like relationship. We saw them in previous like films and stuff like that, but they were kind of more of like side characters. And here in WandaVision, we really got to focus more on, not only like their relationship, but more so solely on, Wanda, and just like kind of the origin of like, the Scarlet Witch, and also just like dealing with like her whole past and how tragic that was, and just like how she's been dealing with this grief. This woman, she's lost like her parents, she lost her brother, she lost her lover, and just like how someone like that, deals with it. Granted, she didn't go about the best ways. In a way, I would say that, Wanda was kind of the, even though we had like Agatha and stuff was there, I would say Wanda in a way was actually almost the real villain of this show, because even though, she was going through all this grief and stuff like that, the way that she handled things was pretty fucked up. Trapping all of these people, in this town of Westview, putting them under like mind control and not letting them like see their kids and stuff like that. That's pretty messed up. And I know some people are like, oh, and she didn't like, she's not being held accountable. I think in a way they're going to deal with that more, you know, in the next like couple films and stuff like that goes, because they're all tied in. And she's on the run now. Like, she can't go back to like the Avengers. Like, at this point, you know, she's kind of almost like in a way exiled, you know, by herself. So she's kind of, you know, off doing her own thing. So in a way they kind of are, and I feel like they're building up towards her character doing some like crazy shit and going down a darker path, you know, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, Spider-Man, things like that. So I think that's kind of where they're heading with the character, which I can't wait to see. Scarlet Witch, you know, Elizabeth Olsen playing this character, she's one of my favorite, you know, like characters in like the whole MCU. So that's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this series, just because, you know, we really got to explore her character more. And Elizabeth Olsen, she was phenomenal in this series. Some great performances from her, also from Paul Bettany, you know, Tiana Paris too. There was some great stuff in this series, and I love like the tributes to like the sitcoms and stuff like that, and it just kind of kept you like guessing, you know, and it was fun theorizing from week to week. So I overall, as the series, I really enjoyed it. It's definitely something that I'm going to go back and watch. I know some people are disappointed, and hey, I mean, that's totally fine. Not everyone's going to love the same thing, but for me, I love these characters. I actually have a better appreciation for Vision now. I'm actually reading like one of the graphic novels I'm going through like right now, so that's cool. Like before, he was kind of like, he was okay, but I really kind of like Vision's character a lot more after this series. So I think as far as just like a character-driven piece, Marvel did a really good job with this, and I can't wait to see, you know, what they have in store for the rest of their Disney Plus series. But I want to hear what your guys, you know, thoughts were, you know, just whether it be on the series finale, overall on the series as a whole. You know, let me know down below in the comments. I want to hear, you know, what you guys think. Again, if you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up and let me know. You know, I'm debating about if I'm going to do week by week videos for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, and stuff like that. Let me know if you'd like to see me do those videos as well. Let me know down below in the comments. But thank you guys for watching these videos. It's been a lot of fun, you know, getting to do these week to week. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.